All right. Welcome to Fleeting Thoughts with Joe Gray and Channing Cornwall. Thank you for listening. And today we have a special guest, a special occasion for a special guy. So today we have my brother Josh Gray. He is the host of his own podcast called Spouting Off with Josh Gray. How you doing, Josh?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on your show. I've been listening for a little while, and it's been really fun and actually a cool way to hear what you're doing. It's been pretty cool.
Yeah. Channing's also here. How are you doing, Channing? I don't want to just
I'm
ignore
good. I'm
you.
Here. I was actually thinking while you were doing your introduction for your brother that it would have been cool how we're like a radio show and like fucking donkey noises and shit. We got a special guest. Anyway, that was what I was thinking about.
Oh, donkey noises would have been great. Yeah, like woo woo woo. I can't make high pitched noises anymore. Singing is terrible. But yeah, it's interesting because I listen to your podcast and it's I listened to it at first just to like check it out, and I wasn't sure if I was going to like it or anything. And now that I listen to it, it's like a part of my routine. I listen to it every week.
Sure.
And what it's done is given me, just like every other podcast I've listened to, is like it's like having conversations with people. You're just kind of listening in,
yeah.
And you get to know a person more, and you get a little bit more of their you get to know about them, and you get to know about their life, and you get to kind of hear them talk, and it's
learn
just
about who they are, really.
Yeah, it gets
Yeah.
You get to know them a lot better, and we only get to talk about we only get to visit every so often, and
Sure.
and that's always good, and we try to cram as much into that time.
Yeah.
But being able to listen to your podcast, I can hear your voice and hear you talk to people, learn about your views on things. You talk about a variety of interesting things, and it's been really fun and personal. It's a personal thing.
Yeah, well, and I mean, we have a good relationship, but obviously we live, a little ways away from each other, so it's cool just to be able to hear your voice and hear what you're doing and kind of get a perspective as if we were able to hang out and have some of the same conversations. So, yeah, I think it's been the same for me. You're on my list of podcasts to listen to and keep up with, and it's been, there's obviously a lot of bias there, but I think it's really interesting, and I think you guys have a really good rapport, so it's fun to listen to you guys bounce ideas off each other, and so I think it's a really cool medium to express what you're doing or just have interesting conversations that you want to share. I think it's fun.
Yeah, and I really have to thank you because you are the reason I have this podcast. And you weren't the inspiration originally. I think Joe Rogan and other podcasters were, but then you got yours started, mm-hmm. and you essentially just wrote down the kit that I needed to buy and told me what I need to get and how to do it, and you helped me with the website and stuff. So yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem.
It's really been a lot of fun. I mean,
thank you for me as well.
Yeah.
Well, of course. Yeah. I mean, I think for me, it's just it was just something I just was listening to a lot of podcasts and really enjoying what they had to offer, and I just had a good time participating in that. And I also was kind of looking for a different kind of project to work on that was somewhat artistic, but very different than video production. And again, I was just getting so much out of the podcast I was listening to. And I thought, well, I know enough people I could have conversations with that I think are interesting, and maybe somebody else would want to listen to that. So
yeah.
It was just fun to go through the motions of trying to see if I could put this thing together. And it's been fun so far, and talking to all sorts of interesting people. And it's a great excuse to have legit conversations with people. A lot of times we run into, you go to a party or you hang out somewhere, and might have a conversation, but who knows for how long. You might get interrupted, all these things when you're hanging out in that way. But to have a very intentional conversation with somebody is, I think it's rare, and I think it's a fun excuse to have those kinds of conversations. And sometimes I say stupid shit that doesn't make any sense, and I quote a lot of Joe Rogan, which is probably annoying to some people, but I learned a lot. I learned a lot of what I think I understand from podcasts I listen to, mm-hmm. assuming that they've done some homework or I've heard it enough times that it kind of makes some sense. But I hope I don't try to come off as like a know-it-all. I don't know very much, but it's fun to have interesting conversations and go down some fun rabbit holes sometimes.
For sure. Yeah, it's definitely, I think for me, conversations are my favorite thing. I really like to talk to people, and as we've been hanging out this week or this weekend, you can tell that like I getting into topics, and I tell you,
I assume it's not just with me either, right?
To me, it's somewhat
oh no, not at all.
Yeah, and then
all the time.
So
yeah, there's not a. I mean, you definitely enjoy it a lot and want to go down those paths, which is fun. But you have a filter. You can turn it off when you want to, but it's
kind of.
You seem to be able to.
Yeah,
kind of. Yeah, I guess you're right.
I know how I'm perceived.
We were just watching
somewhat.
a comedy special, and we've tried to watch a couple, and it's interesting hearing you either. I'm not sure if you're talking to me or to yourself, but trying to or to the comedian who's on the special, trying to mess with their logic and their jokes, and I think it's pretty funny.
Yeah. I question a lot of things people say. Even if it's comedy, I'm still like, what? That's not true. And so I don't know. But that's pretty much just me. Because you're here, I'm saying it out loud. In my head, I'd be doing it. If you were not here, I'd be doing it in my head. So I am constantly analyzing and questioning and things. But it's, when somebody is willing to listen, you can express yourself. And that's really what it's about is, having people that care, and we listen to each other and we get to express ourselves, and I think that's what I get out of it for the most part. It's kind of like it doesn't really matter what we talk about as long as we
are engaging.
Yeah, engage and kind of really
participating
connect
in our thought sharing.
Yeah, and
our verbal telepathy.
Yeah, which is like the not telepathy at all. But anyway. So thank you for being here. Thank you, Channing, for being here, coming all the way.
All the way from
at least a
mile.
4
miles away.
It was like a mile and a half or something. But coming out so late, and this is a fun new adventure for to have 3 people involved.
I have to keep. I'm the awkward person in the middle, so I have to.
We can do like
I'm doing like a countdown in my head. I'm like 5, 4. Okay, switch. Like I gotta.
You gotta make sure you give us equal time.
Don't worry, I won't be offended if you don't look at me the whole podcast. As long as you don't pretend I'm not here, auditorily.
Just don't
really.
Just don't look at me and then touch him. That's gonna be weird because I'll notice too.
Yeah.
So cool. We're going to get into some of the words that we chose. We all chose a word because that's what we do on this podcast, and because we're pretentious English people, I guess we like to.
You know what's funny? What's funny?
Not the right
word. First
time
when I was listening to your podcast, at first I got that feeling a little bit in a way. Like I was trying to think, how can they do this without seeming pretentious? And I think it kind of you've only done a handful or so, but it kind of grows on you where you hear it and you're like, oh, that actually is kind of interesting, and interesting to hear other words that you wouldn't think. And I think people get over that to some degree.
Oh yeah, I don't. I just find them interesting, and so they're just words that I just find them interesting, and I've always found English language very interesting, and it's very complicated, and we use words incorrectly all the time and stuff. So, it was always something me and Channing had always talked about.
You talked about maybe even having that as its own podcast almost. So
yeah,
you really enjoy that. Just language in general is just intriguing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I write all the time, so I always have found it interesting.
Yeah.
Ever since I was a kid, I was like the one kid where we would get like 10 words a week that you had to memorize the definitions and write them. I was like the only fucking kid who's like, sweet, like this is my favorite
Give
thing.
Me 10 more, come on, that's easy.
10? What are you talking about? I got the whole dictionary right here in my pocket.
Yeah, interesting. That's cool.
And I like just throwing random words into people in like a normal conversation.
Yeah.
And then just try to see if they can, if you like are trying to judge them if they really know what you meant. They're just like going with it. Like, okay, yeah.
Sure, it's definitely, and I think that's also one of my skills. I'm not really good at math. I'm a verbal English. I was like writing, so it's like I don't know. It's kind of something I can do. I'd like to think that I'm pretty decent at vocabulary type things, but
articulation.
Yeah, and articulation, and well,
I don't know. You're kind of dropping the ball right now.
But the Poseidon adventures. Yeah. I love it. So anyway, what is let's get into these words we're going to caboot. What is your word, Channing?
Oh.
What are you bringing to the table?
What am I bringing to the table? Well, as part of my weekly hunt down, this week I found Alphitomancy, which is something you probably have never heard. I'd never heard it myself.
I've
at
never
all,
heard that
ever.
word.
It was just something I ran across. But it's the use of barley meal as a means of divination.
Wow.
Right? Fortune telling with barley meal.
You have been found guilty of Alphitomancy. How do you plead?
I've already discovered my fortune through Alphitomancy,
Yeah.
so not guilty.
I know how this will end due to my Alphitomancy.
Oh no! Don't take my barley meal. I need that.
Oh shit! Barley meal. What the fuck is barley meal? I think we should have done
It's
one
like
on
an
that.
old. No, I actually looked because I was like,
You better
"What
look
is
that up.
barley
Yeah.
meal?" Like, as I didn't. I had like a vague notion, I guess, of what it might be, but it's just like a kind of wheat that they use for cereal. Actually.
Oh yeah, that
Yeah,
makes
it's
sense.
not.
Meal,
This is-
barley.
Yeah, like malto meal.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
It's not like a meal to eat. It's
But you
meal.
eat it.
Yeah, you kind of mix
Yeah.
it with some stuff.
You can
I don't know
have
if
meal
you-
for a meal, right?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
interesting. It's a verb and a noun or whatever. To meal on my meal.
Yeah.
I'm confused. Thank you. That is a very interesting word. I feel like you are probably a sorcerer of some sort. Not you. I mean, like if you participate in Alphitomancy. That is a funky fucking word, and I hope we never speak of it again.
I was going to
actually.
say, I think we should have a homework assignment for each of us where we just have to fit that word into a sentence in a conversation with somebody this week sometime.
Like you're just talking to somebody like at a restaurant, and you're just like, oh, it's just like that time I was participating in some Alphitomancy, and then the person's just like, oh shit, I gotta go.
Just go to Shari's and order some barley meal,
Shari's?
and then they'll be like, we don't carry that. Oh, dang it. Are you sure? Because I really need to do some Alphitomancy on your table here.
Yeah, but how do I
Trying to
divinate?
figure out if my wife's pregnant or not. So
Barley meal divination. Come on, people.
yeah, and then acts kind of douchey about it.
Yeah,
You're just like, really? Come on.
Yeah. Sweet. Very interesting word. What is your word, Joshua?
My word is fugacious, and that means fleeting or transitory.
Very,
Thought it was
very
fitting
appropriate.
for your podcast.
I was just
Very
going to say,
appropriate.
it's time to change the title now. Fugacious Thoughts.
Oh man, I love that. That's a good idea. We'll just do it for this. I'll call this episode "Fugacious Thoughts." And yeah, that's a really cool word. The first time you said it to me, this isn't like this isn't pre-recorded or anything like, but we did have a conversation earlier. Not to like
We actually
I
hung
didn't
out
wanna-
before we turned the mic
Yeah,
on. Yeah,
we actually talked a little bit.
Yeah,
but
it's
when you
weird.
talked about it, I thought it was the word. I thought it was related to the word fugazi, which is the word that
The band used.
huh?
Oh, it's Fugazi. Isn't there a band called Fugazi?
I've never heard of it.
Am I making that up?
No, I'm trying to think. I remember it was like a show. They're like, Fugazi. They said it like that.
Oh, really?
But I can't think of what it was.
It's like an Italian word, like that mobsters use for something being fraudulent or fake or something, and they use it in I think it's Donnie Brasco. Al Pacino says something is a fugazi, and it means it's fake. It's not real. It's not worth anything. And I've just never heard any other word that had F-U-G-A.
There's a band called Fugazi. Yeah.
Oh, Fugazi. Interesting.
F-U-G-A-Z-I.
I wonder A-Z-I, so that's a bit of a different pronunciation.
Sorry, I digress.
Fugacious.
Fugacious.
How would you use that in a sentence other than fugacious thoughts? You would say something like their visits were fugacious.
Yeah. I think that's how it works.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably not going to use that too often.
No, I don't think so. I mean, yeah, I don't know. You should try to add it to your vocabulary.
I will.
Yeah.
I've started
Fugacious.
adding some of these words into my vocabulary. Pusillanimous, man.
Pusillanimous.
Throw that out once a day.
Yeah,
You guys went off on that one for a while.
he was talking about how he got Bill Burr was talking about how his
Horripilation?
What is this?
Is that what
Yeah,
you're
it was
going for?
horripilation.
I literally just used that in a sentence when I was writing a chapter the other day.
Oh, really?
I was
You
about to
used
say
it in your
goosebumps,
book?
and I was like, nope. And I like hit backspace a couple times, and then just like horripilation.
That's great. Way to go.
That's good, man.
This podcast is fucking changing lives.
Expanded vocabulary.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
We're growing every day.
It's crazy how odd our language is, though. I don't really have an awesome perspective from other languages, but often you hear other languages are much easier to learn, things like that. And it's interesting having kids and seeing them learn how to spell and understand words and having your own experiences is very challenging. Our language seems to be very tricky and not follow a lot of rules a lot of the time.
Or it follows rules sometimes.
Yeah,
like we
yeah,
were
yeah.
talking
That actually
about
is probably
I
worse.
before E, except after C the other day.
Yeah.
Except for
Like,
with the word
just leave
receive.
it. Just leave
Yeah,
it. Just leave it. Keep the rule the whole time.
Or just don't have
it.
a rule.
Or don't have a
yeah.
rule. Yeah.
I think it's because our language is so melting potish.
Yeah.
Where there's just so many.
Melting potish.
Yeah, it's
I like
it's melting potly. What are we talking about?
Potily?
Potily. There's just so many. Like, there's French influences, there's Spanish influences, there's Slavic and Latin
mutt language. Is that what you're getting at?
That's a mutt language. That's a good way to put it.
So I think that's why it's difficult, because if you're learning a language, especially as an adult, you need to know the rules and you need to know how to use it. But really, I think it just takes a lot of experience. So when we grow up, I mean, ultimately, like, the spelling is obviously weird. Like, you can't. Spelling is a problem. Yeah. But as far as, like, conversations and meaning and stuff, that we get pretty easily.
Well, it's interesting because when I was in school, they taught spelling. They taught you from the beginning how to spell words. My kids went away from that, or their teachers went away from that, where it was at younger ages, it was more important to get sentences and ideas out than to have them spelled properly. So the idea was just sound it out, every word. So now, my kid's in 4th grade, and he's having a hard time spelling, and now they're just like flip the switch, basically. They're like, okay, now it's time to spell them right.
Yeah, it's
weird.
weird.
You're like, well, hold on a second here. Like, are they supposed to sound it out or spell them? I think it just makes it very confusing, because you're trying to use your brain in a way that's very specific to sounding out words. And they're like, now take all that you've learned and all you've tried to figure out by sounding stuff out and say, no, actually there's a lot of reasons or a lot of things that are spelled totally different than what they should.
Right. They're not phonetic.
It's just weird. It's just a tangent for me to go down, but just it's interesting how that works and how confusing a lot of it is.
Sure. Yeah, it's confusing. I mean, you can't fault people too much if they can't spell shit right. I mean, it's pretty hard, you know. That's why we have the fucking internet and we just look it up.
Sometimes it's hard to make searches or
when you don't know
if you spelled that bad. I mean, it's pretty damn good, but sometimes you can spell it so bad you're not even anywhere near.
For sure.
Is that a good sign?
That's not good. But we're safe. Just some gunshots in the background. It's no big deal.
I think it was too, to add into
probably
the
firecrackers.
Inability to spell correctly is that a lot of people use cell phones, even little kids now, and they have the autocorrect shit where you just kind of spell the word somewhat and then it just fixes it for you.
Sure. Or you use it abbreviated like LOL or like you just get rid of the vowels and to save time and space for like things like Twitter and texting and stuff. And so I think language it evolves with our usage of it and our ability to change and change it. I don't think there's anything wrong with any of that. I think if you can if it's about meaning and understanding and communication, it's not necessarily about form, function, and technicalities. There is a huge part of that, but I'm saying that ultimately, as long as you can communicate ideas, that's what we're
if the main
going
goal
for.
is just communication,
some
form of communication. Now, if you want to have really accurate communication, then things like writing books.
I'm a very big fan
properly
of
has its order and has its reasoning.
Obviously, writing a book is not the same as making a text or writing a Twitter thing.
I turned off my autocorrect because I have to spell things correctly and put correct punctuation. Even in my texts, I can't not do it.
I think I'm like in between being anal about grammar and spelling and being okay as long as I can kind of understand it. I still get a little annoyed at, misspellings and stuff like that. I'm more interested in people using words correctly. That's why I like definitions.
Yeah.
More than, because that's what leads to understanding.
Sure. Common definitions of
Right, we have to
terminology.
agree on a definition or else we don't get to have a very clear communication.
Yeah, it's very different.
Yeah.
There was a Radiolab podcast that talked a little bit about some of that.
Oh, sure.
It was quite interesting. Have
Yeah.
you ever listened to Radiolab?
I think I listened to one of them, and I remember it had really good production.
Yeah. It's interesting. I digress. I just reminded me of a subject.
My word
Your word.
is a word that I actually use quite a
Quite
often.
a lot.
Quite a lot. Rah. It's superfluous, and it means being more than is sufficient or required. It means to be excessive. I think I use it in the unnecessary or needless definition. I tend to say things are superfluous, just unneeded. We do not need it, and it's extra, and we like a lot of communication, a lot of the media, a ton of things that we do it's not concise, it's not useful, and it's superfluous, and it's not necessarily bad. It's just ultimately extra. Like right now, I'm kind of expanding on something that doesn't need to be expanded on. It's a bit
You're defining
superfluous.
your
My
word
definition-
by your actions.
Yeah, I'm demonstrating superfluousness. There's another definition is obsolete, so that would make sense as well.
When you said you use it a lot, when have you used it recently?
I don't know.
Probably at work.
Probably at work. I think at work I talk a lot.
What
in
you're
general.
doing right now is superfluous.
Yes.
You see what you're doing right now, Johnny?
Yeah.
I know you just started, but what you're doing right now is very
Yeah.
superfluous.
Well, I go to the U of O, but I don't really know what that means.
Yeah. Can you use it in a sentence? I just told you it. I said it to you in a sentence.
Yeah, nice.
For sure. So we got some words. We got some words down our gullets.
First episode with 3.
And in their ear holes.
Are we allowed to do more than 2?
We're just breaking ground. This
Seems
is
reasonable to
summer.
have a word per person.
Right? It seems to. Well, it was funny because when we started, we never even agreed to anything. We weren't like, hey, we need to each bring a word to the thing. But then it was like egalitarian nature of our relationship or something just was like lended itself to you owe a word and I owe a word. So
Yeah. What's cool about the podcast, though, too, is if you get tired of it, you could just say, hey, we don't want to talk about words anymore.
Yeah.
We're not doing that anymore.
Totally.
And that'd be totally cool, too.
Yeah. I like it partly because of it's like a signature thing that we do.
Yeah.
It's a good starting. Like if you're not really sure what to talk about, but you can talk about some words, and it gets the saliva in your mouth and a
Oh, yeah.
Synapses
conservative.
firing.
See? There you go.
I'm excited now.
Lick your lips and get jazzed up.
Right on. Well, let's get to chatting about some other stuff. So we talked a little bit about podcasting.
Podcasting?
Podcasting is where you
For dogs.
pause. Oh, podcasting for dogs. That's a great idea. If you had a podcast about dogs,
you just called the Pausecast.
God damn it!
Yep.
Clever.
I don't want to do this one anymore. I'm like
Podcasting with
away.
Spike.
This is our season
Spike.
finale.
With
Our series
Fido.
finale.
Our series finale.
We're
Are we gonna have
starting a new
another
podcast
series?
next week.
Our season, series finale. Let's talk a little bit about technology, and some things related to the media and all that stuff. What I was going to say is technology, good or bad?
There's one person listening right now that's like, fuck this. And just turned it off. Fuck these guys.
All right. I can dig it.
Oh, that's funny.
No, it's just like if you start talking about like the Ferguson stuff, I'm sure there's people who'd be like, nope, heard enough. Done.
Yeah, well, it's so easy to get into that, and everybody wants to talk about it, and everybody. I'm actually talk to anybody about it, but it seems like the media is just going fucking crazy with the riots and with any police brutality is like front and center on every single website you check out. Twitter's blowing up with that shit too. it's interesting to see the waves of topics that get talked about in the media.
Sure.
Like right now, it's all this, police brutality, rioting, the role of police officers in society and things like that. And then, a couple weeks ago, it was like
I miss Ebola.
It was like Ebola, and then like before that, it was like marijuana being legalized. So it's kind of like the media, or at least how I ingest it. It's like it's very like. I don't know, narrow-minded for a while. Like, it seems like we just they take these little rides of like, oh, let's talk about this, and every media outlet talks about this, and this is the big story, and that's everything that goes on. It's interesting. Like, it's interestingly narrow focus. I don't really know why. Obviously, that's
you
an
need
inspection.
viewers. That's why.
So if someone else has a popular topic, then you just jump on that and you go, "Oh, this is hitting. They're doing a story on it. They got 1,000 hits. They're getting everything."
People are interested in this right now, and they're going to search it.
Yeah,
and I want my stuff about it to come up.
Yeah,
because my advertisers will like that.
Yeah,
because that will make them more money.
Yeah,
it's a
for
factor,
sure.
Anyway,
yeah, that's got to be it. It's just like it's bandwagon, and that makes sense because their job is to. Disseminate information in whatever way they determine to do it.
Some sort of information, sure.
Yeah, whatever skewed perspective they want to have on it, which tends to be skewed. I mean, everyone's perspective.
I think it's interesting, though. I mean, they often do have, an underlying bed of truth, but it's interesting how different organizations choose to take that story in a certain specific route.
Yeah, and it's almost prescribed by the name of the organization. Like, if you watch TYT, you can pretty much expect a particular viewpoint. If you watch Fox News, you can absolutely expect a particular viewpoint. CNN or whatever. I don't watch a lot of these things regularly anymore, but I used to, and you can almost predict, like, oh, they're going to take this stance, they're going to take this stance.
The Republican ones are always my favorite because it's always Obama's fault for everything that happened. He started Ebola, and he was actually the cop that shot the black kid. It wasn't even that cop. It was Obama. He fucking rolled into town and shot a black kid.
Geez.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that's like Fox News is the most Republican version of that.
Yeah, no, it's funny.
Yeah, for sure.
My mother-in-law is very staunch Republican, so my Facebook feed gets these cool little.
Oh.
She shared right-wing conservative dailies article about this.
It's like our dad.
Yeah. Our dad is massively conservative, Republican, and not very smart. So I'm not saying all Republicans aren't very smart. I'm saying that
I'm mildly offended.
I blocked my dad because of all the Facebook stuff. Not like physically, but
we know the tech lingo, Joe.
Damn it, you know what I'm talking
buddy.
about.
I think most listeners probably do too if they're listening to a podcast.
Yeah, they're probably pretty
block?
hip.
Was he punching you, son? Did you have to block them?
What?
Anyway,
did you put up a shield or some shit? You get it.
Yeah, I think any argument that has, just no real evidence as a backing is just silliness. And it seems like somehow they get away with a lot of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's just very, very, very loosely based in any fact, if at all. And it's I don't know. It's just weird.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that they jump on stories way before any of the evidence is in, and then before all the witnesses have been talked to, and so they'll just kind of pick a way to skew it in that way. It'll be somewhat sensational or something when it might not even be that interesting.
Yeah,
I mean, police brutality and things, those kind of occurrences have been going on forever, and they pick a few stories here and there and make it seem like those are the only things happening and that's the only things police are doing, and then you get these other like little stories about, oh, this is a good cop, finally we get a video of a good cop, and they're like buying a kid a present or like throwing a football in the street or something, and it's like,
is that all it takes to be a good guy? Is to throw a football in the street?
I think
that'd be
to a child.
I'm gonna go buy so many footballs, and whenever I feel bad about myself, I'm just gonna go on the fucking street and throw it.
Yeah, I think the interesting part about it is I think a lot of like large media corporations, they jump on the stories for their reasons, but at the same time, it can bring up and expose some issues that have kind of been boiling up and that people are concerned about. There is a certain amount of logic that's like there's a reason why people are as interested in it as they are, and some of that might be because of misconceptions, but it also might be because there are actually some issues that have kind of hit a boiling point. And I think, like a lot of things, it can have some benefit, even though maybe their intentions are a little shady at times. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Because I think that kind of issue that it is bringing up now, maybe the actual proportions are pretty low overall, in overall societal, statistics, but it's
still an issue
that it's kind of important that
Sure.
seems like it could be addressed. So it's interesting that
Sure.
that it works out that way.
I think it's important that people are talking about important social issues. It's whether or not the way that it's presented is actually like truthful and will lead to some sort of change, and normally it doesn't. So that's I think one of the frustrations with most of the media is that they propose all this these people, all this negative, the world's out to get you and the cops are going to kill you and all this stuff. But what's the solution to any of this? Like what's really going on? Sure. What are the backgrounds? What are the underlying issues? What's the history that led to this particular situation? And I think it's hard to go in depth and really tackle social issues head on without either totally going over the heads of a lot of people or totally offending a ton of people or whatever. Yeah. So,
what do you think about
interesting.
The cameras? It's a big thing, kind of coinciding with this, is police wearing cameras.
Oh yeah, I saw that. The Eugene police are supposed to roll that out pretty soon, where it's like a little chest camera that they wear on the pocket of their uniform, so that they can have evidence to either defend themselves or implicate themselves in whatever.
There was a city that did a trial of it, and I don't have the exact stats, but police complaints went way down, false accusations went down, crime went down. And at a significant rate in this one city that I have to look up to.
I think it's in California.
I think something like that. But it's pretty people know about the story pretty well now, but it was really interesting as a preliminary idea, and it just makes sense. If everybody's kind of being watched and there's a record of exactly what you're doing, you might act a little different. And you might default to being a little nicer just because you'd rather not be looked at in a negative light. And I think it seems to prove that it helps everybody on some level. It helps the cop because any shady stuff, Joe Blow piece of crap maybe is saying or doing is on record, and same the other direction.
Mm-hmm. I think that we demand accountability, and that's a very good solution, and we should try it. I think the implications and ultimate results are curious and interesting, and we should find out what happens when you put a recording device on police officers. If we can't trust them to be the noble arbiters of morality and use their power for good, which we can't, obviously, because that's never been the case of anyone you give power to, and a gun or a baton or whatever. You know what I mean? I'm just saying, we give them a lot of leeway, and we need to know that they're using it
we're
in a way that benefits
they're
us.
Use it the way that we're paying them with our taxes.
Yeah, and we pay that, and we have every right to demand a standard of behavior. And if they're abusing their power, then the only one who I hate to use if you don't have anything to hide, but it's not even that they're hiding things, it's that they're doing these things in plain sight, but there's no proof. So having the evidence, obviously they're going to act better. And I think that I always like the idea of filming if I got pulled over, or filming if I saw a police interaction in the street or something. But then I found all these, you can get in trouble for recording a police officer. So it's if I can't record them and they're not recording them, then whose word are we using? It's just their word against mine. They're typically given the benefit of the state. Yeah.
You're the thug, criminal.
I think ultimately video camera equipment is not very expensive anymore, and we can get away with it.
Technology's advanced so far that they can even contemplate putting some sort of camera device on somebody's person where they can still work in a stressful environment and provide decent quality video. I think is pretty impressive.
And I think it's important that they can't tamper with the evidence, and we can understand that. But I think video...
They've had cameras for a long time. It's just not body cameras.
Yeah, and they had them in their cars and stuff,
Yeah,
which has been
they have them in their
very
cars.
useful. I mean, the show Cops has been great, and I think
it helps for both sides.
right. It gives them accountability, and it shows evidence, and evidence is very important in legal cases. And you could, you know, I mean, if you do something obviously illegal on camera, you're fucked. I don't know.
I mean, it sucks that there's a need.
Yeah,
It sucks
I was
that
gonna
you
say,
have.
that's
to
what I'm
have it.
saying.
The whole idea of being a police officer is that you're upholding the law, and if you're really believe in doing that, you shouldn't need a fucking thing on your breast pocket to prove that you're doing it.
Sure.
So.
But obviously they do.
And I think like the media thing we were talking about, you know, where they blow a lot of stuff out of proportion. Anyway, I think, you know, that's a challenge with the police concept is, you know, number one, it's just a job. In a lot of ways, it's just a job. They're just people doing it. And there's a lot of it that's just wacky. You talk to a lot of cops that don't believe in a lot of the laws that they're sworn to uphold. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I think you can't deny there seems to be a potential need for this type of a service, at least in the current society that we have. So it's tricky. And I think there's a lot of, you know, like a lot of things do, there's probably a small percentage of cops that are real shady and bad and trying to do evil shit. And there's probably a lot of them that are like, hey, I you know, even if they're kind of unrealistic or not, you know, I just really want to help people and do good. I think there's a lot of those, probably a lot more. So it's a tricky subject. But I think if your job's that controversial and just sketchy shit you're doing, it probably benefits cops even more than people in a lot of ways for the cameras.
I think. Sorry.
No,
I was going to say, ultimately, like, I think the whole, like, debate over whether or not they should have cameras is one that will not last very long. Because ultimately, like, there's already cameras all over the place. Well, you know, who has control of those is up to, you know, the situation. But, like, eventually we're going to have Google Glasses. We're going to have our own means to have video recording. I could record audio on my phone. No one would know it if I was, like, getting pulled over or going into a situation. And what's good about a recording is that it, other than editing and manipulation or stopping, you know, like where you start the thing right after the cop hit him or right before, you know, and then you make it seem like that's how it was.
Sure.
Other than those possible mistakes, you can't lie. Like, it is an objective version of what happened. It may not be everything, and it may not have captured everything correctly, or you might run into some issues. But the machine itself isn't a person with an agenda, with a story to tell. It's just a recording that can kind of cut through a lot of bullshit and a lot of it, you know, a lot of biases and things like that. So I think it's, and like I'm saying, like I'm trying to say is that, you know, there's gonna be cameras everywhere. Like, privacy in your own home, obviously an important issue. Out in the public, you know, I mean, it's kind of sad, but ultimately it's not all just to, like, catch each other doing things. We love video, we love audio, we love to look at things. We like to look at people's lives. We like to voyeuristically find out about other people. That's why it's so popular to get interested in all these things, because we want to know what's happening in the world. And, you know, police officers have a lot of power, and I think some sort of accountability is important, obviously. So let's camera 'em up.
Yeah, it's interesting though. It's interesting to have a job that
everyone's
things
like,
are so sketch. That
yeah,
you have
everyone's
to
like,
have
I don't
video on
know,
all the time.
Yeah, we got to
or all
film
the time
you
You're in an incident to make sure. But it's
kind of one of the only jobs like that. I mean, there are cameras in a lot of businesses, like in any, like most new retail businesses, like in subways and stuff.
Yeah.
They are filming those employees like crazy, and the customers that come in, because the businesses want to know what's going on their property.
Sure.
And
they want evidence if something goes wrong.
Right. And so, you know, I don't know. I guess it's kind of sad, but I think it's totally logical that you give someone a badge and a gun, they automatically change their behavior and the way that they treat other people. And then you give them a camera, they automatically are going to change the way that they behave and treat other people. You know, after time, I think that what'll come out is, like, people will stop thinking about them having cameras on themselves, and they'll start acting naturally, and then we'll have a very interesting look at that job and like 10 years down the line after they all have cameras for like years, and we have all this footage to go through, and like whenever something happens, the video comes up, I hope it would streamline a lot of the legal system as far as legality goes.
We'll see about that.
But the cop could always, hide evidence, without the camera seeing it or whatever. But it'll be interesting to see what happens after people get used to these cameras. After we're all not thinking about cameras being everywhere, it's just a given. How much, like how editing software will change because it's so much content to deal with. You know what I mean? Because, everyone's video recording everything all the time. And I think, we're getting these video images of like cops beating on people, and the cops are probably like, oh shit, I did not. How do they not know that people are recording everything? You know what I mean? Like these things come out and things just get.
Well, everybody has one, so it's hard to keep track. And if you're doing your job properly, you're not. You're doing your best to evaluate all the people around you. But if you've got 10, 20 people around you when you're dealing with an incident, you're probably dealing with the immediate incident first.
Right. And then you don't get a lot of the like the stuff that led up to the incident.
Sure.
I was listening to this video about the Rodney King stuff, because that was like an kind of another really big police issue that had to do with video, because the video was very damning. But what the media ended up doing, a lot of the early media outlets, is they took off the first 13 seconds of the video. And the first 13 seconds of the video was more of why they got into the altercation. It was prior to them to start hitting Rodney King. And then after that 13 seconds of video came out, that's why they got acquitted, was part of that video showed the justification for it. Now, whether or not they were justified in it, I don't know all the details of that story, but the fact that it was edited 13 minutes down or 13 seconds down to create a different story is obviously unethical for the media outlet to do, and it was done on purpose. And
you got to manipulate it to make a more exciting story.
Well, and then, but the ultimate cause of that was the fucking LA riots. So that's not an innocent act of like sensationalism. That's an intentional act of misinformation. That's to get people rioting, or they didn't obviously want that. But
they knew
to
that
some
degree what the effect would be.
It would outrage people. They knew that, and they knew that their outlet would be like seen by 1 million people. But it's like, that kind of stuff is part of, what I'm talking about, like 10 years down the line, 5 years down the line. Video, it could lose a lot of credibility ultimately. And
if it's edited, sure.
That's what I mean, is like, how do we find out if it's edited, fraudulent, pictures are things that we're always trying to figure out. Like if I see a picture on Twitter that's like kind of crazy looking, like a really big thing, or like a weird animal or something, I'm not being specific, but like I almost go straight to Photoshop. Like I don't believe shit, like as far as photos. You can Photoshop things that look perfectly real and they're not. And so we have to be very skeptical about how it's being used, and we need like another agency or something to like. I just recently
saw
sure it's not
a
fake.
YouTube video of a guy with a GoPro on his helmet while he's riding a bike, and he's riding
the
through
bear
the
one.
forest. Yeah.
Ugh.
I
scary as shit.
I'll be honest. The first time I watched it, I was convinced that it was real.
It's not real?
No, it's not real.
You know what? The whole time I'm thinking, this is the most horrifying event that could happen. Like one of the most horrifying things, right? Just being chased by a bear through the woods. And it's so well done that I just was like, we just
what you notice is if you pause it at specific points, when you see the bear, I mean, you see the bear very infrequently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very
towards the end.
It's blurry and all that.
But you just watch it once and you're just like, holy shit.
It's just an edited video.
That's amazing. But it's just edited.
A bike ride and a bear situation.
Yeah.
But that's so I get that.
But what's
like
cool is, I mean, even though to me I was like, wow, that's really realistic. The first probably 2 times I watched it, maybe 3. But all these people right away were like, terrible effects. Right. It's horrible. So you have a certain amount of community that's helping to clarify it.
It's kind of like how hackers help make things safer on the internet by teaching other businesses about hacking possibilities. And a lot of hackers don't care about like ruining the, they're not trying to like destroy things. They're just really, really good at programming, and they really know how to get in there, and they really want they're okay with like making things better, and I think that's really important that people are skillful and knowledgeable and they can help me and layman's to like debunk things. I think that's important. For those kind of, I thought that was real, but only because I don't give a fuck if it's real or not. Like,
yeah.
Okay, you
still,
didn't die from a bear.
It's still
That's
terrifying, but it definitely changes the narrative when you know it's not real.
Absolutely.
Because you're imagining like, shit, what if I go in the woods? Is a bear gonna? I've never seen anything like that.
Yeah, not that direct. Like,
no, you can see him maybe do it once, but then when he rides off, you could assume that the bear would be like, no, I'm not worried about that weird contraption thing.
It's also weird because bears can run really, really fast on straight ground.
That was one of the arguments. Is like that guy was riding so slow that bear could have caught him in like 3 seconds.
Yeah, and that was a big bear. They can run really fast. Most of the time, they can run faster than we can run for sure. Yeah. And I was the whole time I'm thinking, go down a hill, because that's my only defense for bears.
That's the only way you can outrun a bear.
Isn't that the only way?
Is that even real? I've always heard that.
Yeah, I think it is
because
they're so heavy.
The weight ratio. Yeah.
I mean, whether or not anyone tested that theory, but it makes sense.
Somebody who's not Snopes it.
Ultimately, like, I'm going to try it. If I get you'll prove it. I'll prove it through a fake video.
Through edited.
Oh, it's like, if a fraudulent act leads to a positive outcome, is it still a bad thing to do?
I wonder if there's a group of like bear survivors who were just really outraged with that
traumatized.
Video. You don't know what it's really like. I survived a bear attack.
Yeah, they just
What do they call that? Isn't there something when you do things now that you're supposed to like tell people before they watch it so that they don't have like an effect in an episode or something? There's something about that.
Oh, it's like a post-traumatic spoiler alert.
Yes. I heard it on Duncan Trussell's podcast. I think he was talking about it.
You have to preface everything with
you have to like say don't watch this if whatever you have issues with this thing or something.
You should do that with everything, though.
I think that's courteous.
That's crazy.
I think it's courteous, but ultimately you can't predict the reaction of anyone else. So it's not up to you to like.
I can't remember what they
tell
call it.
It
has a name though. It has a specific name.
Preliminary warning or some shit.
I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah, but I mean, what if you show like if you go to a movie, right? The whole point is that it's surprising to you. So if you happen to be, I think if you've had a particular traumatic experience and then you see something that triggers an emotional response, and then you blame the stimulus, then you haven't dealt with your post-traumatic stress, and you need to go to therapy. You need to take care of that and not blame the world for existing outside of yourself, and like things are depicted where that's
you've lost limbs
you can't be
to a lightsaber before, and just be known that it don't watch Star Wars. It's a little scary.
If you lost limbs, is that what you said?
Limbs to a lightsaber, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. That'd be horribly traumatic, and you should deal with the stress and pain of that, and not go see Star Wars movies.
And
the beginning of Star Wars is like
to people how you got a lightsaber and where it is.
Possibly explain the technology behind it, because I would love that technology. In the new Star Wars film, this is just totally random.
It's a new lightsaber, yeah.
It's a lightsaber that's a cross, and then the part of the hilt has little lightsabers coming out the side.
Yeah, it's a cross
What
guard.
is the use for that? And how does that guy not hurt himself? And why does it look like a cross? And why is Jesus holding it?
It's a cross guard to protect his hands.
Yeah, it's the part of the sword that has isn't that part of the hilt?
Yeah, the hilt has the cross guard to protect your hands from sword strikes. Because they can, like, when you clash swords, they can run the sword down and hit you in the hand.
If you don't have that,
I know, but
chop your fingers off.
So he has more lightsaber there, right? It's like it goes out.
And they were talking about, like, they haven't explained it because obviously the movie's not out yet, but I'm a huge Star Wars nerd. Just for the record.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
There are materials in the Star Wars universe that are resistant to lightsaber blades, because one of the complaints people had was it's like the metal material comes out first, to each side, and
so
then
his
the
hand can't
comes
go
off
up
of that.
past the metal.
There's like a metal hilt there, and then people were like, "Well, they could slide it down; the blade would just cut through the metal." But they're like, "No, there's metal resistant, or there's lightsaber resistant materials.
There would have to be, or else you couldn't make a fucking lightsaber."
Yeah. But anyway, sorry.
I saw it and I was like, "What is going on here?" But I think it's funny that like you can just show one new little interesting thing and people
lose
just
their shit.
Crazy.
That Star Wars movie is going to be insanity when it comes out next week. The mall is going to explode.
Oh yeah, I think it looks. Is it already out almost this week?
No,
next week?
No, next December, not this.
Oh,
December.
I thought you said next week.
No,
you meant next
sorry,
year.
I meant next year. Did I say next?
I think you said next week.
But next year,
I was going to say that's weird.
That's like probably the most. That's the movie that I've waited for since I was 5. Like, after I watched the original trilogy, I was like, what happens next? And then I get the shitty prequel movies in the 90s. Fuck those.
No, we don't need to talk about that. Yeah, Star Wars fans. Yeah,
Anyway.
I get it. I think it, as long as it's fun, I think it will be. I think it'll be good.
It's gonna be great.
Anyway,
Hopefully. Who knows?
We went from
Still
technology
technologically
to
related to sci-fi crazy stuff.
yeah, it is related, I guess. Anyway,
What do you think about, a lot of the technology that we have now, social media, cell phones, things like that? Where do you differentiate between pros and cons and things like that?
well, it's a kind of a vague question.
Yeah.
Do you mean
it's a
do I
conversation
think that
prompt.
like social media is ultimately good or bad for society?
No.
Or do I like as
I'd
personally?
like to
What do I
hear
use?
A perspective on technology that comes from wherever you want to start from.
Okay. I think technology is awesome. And
Insane.
it's the way of the future. No. I think what I really think is that we're at a very unique point in history and a really unique point in technology where we still have a ton of leftover traditional old-fashioned ways of doing things, and there's a big kind of philosophical or cultural shift that's happening with technology, and we're like on an upturn wave, like all of us in our generation that are experiences. So everyone kind of experiences technology in their own way, but like when I was very young, their computers were just starting to become in the household and in schools, and so I had the very original Macs at school, and with the green DOS and the green cursors, and the really old fashioned video game. But within 10-15 years, it's just blown up, and there's I think technology. I'm really glad that we have inventors and smart people who are not interested in the implications, the possible implications of technology. Because I think that if we were so worried about what it would do to like make computers that can process things like this in crazy amount, because we can always think of negative aspects to technology, and there's horrible aspects to technology like atom bombs and things like that. But as far as technology's potential to solve a lot of problems and to give people routes of expression and to disseminate information. I mean, the information age is what we're calling it, and all that. I think that is I think it's changing things for the better, and I think once in the next 50 to 100 years, technology increases exponentially, and so it's really impossible to predict. It could be within 5-10 years that we're just like holograms and virtual reality. And we were having an interesting conversation at work the other day about the future of gaming and the future of technology, and talking about virtual reality. There was it was funny, we were talking about Tupac, and I was like, oh, there's like there's like these new holograms that they're coming out with, and there was the whole Coachella thing like 5 years ago with Tupac's hologram, just like awesome technology, like life-size. Tupac is still alive. It's awesome. He's in light. It's very similar to Jesus situation. And then on South Park, they bring up holograms as being very realistic, and I think that's interesting. I think it'll be interesting to see how that changes entertainment and changes the way that we get information out. Like, instead of doing a YouTube video, you might do a hologram video, and you just record yourself, and you do podcasts. I mean, it's just becoming that much easier. I mean, we're being able to store. I was looking on Facebook and talking. It was talking about how we'll be able to store. Have hard drives that store information as light. So essentially, the smallest units of electrons and protons will be able to be used as storage.
Fiber hard drives?
Huh?
Like fiber hard drives?
What do you mean? Like fiber optics?
Yeah. Fiber optics is light.
Yeah, exactly. Like
Data
ultimately
traveling
being
away.
able to just fit in tons of information into very small amounts of space. And I think that we're just beginning to take advantage of and understand what these things are, and we really don't have any idea what the implications are in the future. I think it's like, having a ton of Legos and just being, having just all the time to just make stuff, and you don't really know what's going to happen. It could end up being like everything just gets smashed and everything is terrible and all the Legos burn, or it could be that this is this beautiful castle that's being created. And that's kind of a metaphor for our use of technology and our ability to create and innovate and solve problems like food and shelter, and I think it's changing economics like crazy. Like money is changing, and I think there's a lot of people trying to grasp and keep old ways, and so we're kind of at a struggle. There's like pro technology, and then there's like, it's all gonna crash and we're gonna go back to the Stone Age and it's gonna be apocalyptic, and so I think we should take advantage of it while we can and try to enjoy it and understand it, and it's giving people opportunities for jobs and things that would never be an option before. And it definitely challenges a lot of traditions and ways of being. And, that's kind of an overarching idea. Like, I didn't really say anything. It was pretty vague, what I just said there. You guys know what I'm saying. I don't know. I'm trying to, if you want to input whatever, but it's interesting because at the same time, I still appreciate non-technology. I still like camping, hunting, fishing. I think those are really important skills, and I think a lot of people would make cases that like you need to know that kind of stuff, even if technology ultimately makes that stuff superfluous.
There it is. Superfluous, nice. I was going to say that I feel like we're in a delicate spot of technology.
Yeah, it's kind of like a balance
because
board.
Technology is amazing, and I use it obviously all the time on a daily basis. Without technology, the 200 people that have purchased my books would have never been able to do that. Like, I would have had to beg an agent to get a publisher and jump through all these hoops. But with technology now, I can just format it and put it out there for people, and I have all these means of social communication through Facebook and Twitter and all these other outlets. So in like that regard, for me personally, it's I love technology. It's incredible. It's a great way to communicate with people. But at the same time, it's also led to obesity and like a general laziness about people because things are just so much easier to do now. Things don't require as much effort as they once did, and which is good to an extent. But I feel like you have to strike that delicate balance of utilizing technology but not overutilizing it, because people ignore the technology of your own body, which is an amazing tool, and it's so diverse and can adapt to just about anything you put it through if you're willing to put it through the test. And people, I think that it's easier to just use technology instead of trying to learn a new skill or do something different. And so I think there's going to be people who just overly consume and get crazy with it, and then like the more traditional people will hold on to those older values because I think that, like you were saying, they recognize that how helpful some skills can be. And so I hope that in the future that we still have people utilizing their own bodies for things and retaining necessary skills without technology, because you never know, there could come a time where fucking technology just blows up and doesn't exist anymore, and then we would go extinct at that point probably. So it's like like you said, it's a very weird time because I don't know.
It's interesting because our bodies don't evolve as fast as technology changes. So it's interesting to see how maybe once our bodies evolve around some of the technology, it might be really interesting to see how that comes together in some connected way maybe. But you can't forget that either. I mean, I was hearing about a study about people's necks, and there's having more and more neck issues because people are looking down at their phones, and it's like the phone's awesome and there's a lot of cool things you can do with it, but our bodies only recently learned that this thing is even a capability, and it's not ready to just have its head down, your head down all the time. So it's interesting how that works. It's just interesting to see how it progresses and how it always has this underlying amount of intent to be beneficial, but it's always smart to be cognizant of what that is and how far it goes. It always makes me think, these conversations often, the image of Wall-E and the people in those chairs.
Exactly.
Wall-E? And it always makes me think, like,
Oh,
I see
the
that
movie.
as
Movie.
I mean, it seems like that could be a potential.
Yeah.
And that's a bit frightening. I'm not saying it will happen that way or it won't, but
I found that hilarious
interesting
in that movie, but it was like shocking when I was watching it because it's like a kid movie. I was expecting this lighthearted adventure, and then they show what the people had become, and I was just like, I actually saw for a second, and was like, holy shit, those
are things we want to avoid.
Very real.
Sure, there's a lot of benefits to it, but what are you risking too?
Yeah,
and that's it's just like anything. You gotta weigh those pros and cons, but it's impressive how fast it moves. I mean, how. Mm-hmm. We're able to do what we're doing right now, and with video editing and those kinds of things, it's exciting too. It's exciting to see how easy it is, especially like you were talking about for writing or me for video production, to be able to at a reasonably low cost produce some very high quality, art or whatever you want to call it, and be able to share it is a much newer concept than it ever has ever been.
For sure,
I think that's pretty cool. Audiences, I think in general, will shrink for individuals, but be a lot more people will have smaller audiences.
Right, you won't just have like one major event like they used to, where it was just like one thing happening and everyone's involved. Like the Colosseum in Rome, you would just have everyone. That's your entertainment for the fucking week.
That's what there is.
And now we just have like I don't want to have cable. I don't want to watch TV. I just want to watch PewDiePie every day of my life.
I don't know this.
He's a video game guy. I just mentioned it because
I'm
mentioning it's a shout out to South Park.
Yeah,
ultimately,
okay. He was in the last episode.
I just think it's funny.
He's not a real character in real life.
He's a human. That's his username on YouTube,
that's
and he reviews video games.
Plays video games and broadcasts.
But is he just a character in
South Park?
South Park?
No, he's a real person in real
okay.
life.
Yeah.
They just use his real image in South Park,
and
then they talk about him.
Gotcha. Sorry, I should just watch South Park and I know what you're talking about.
No, it's cool. Yeah, it's interesting that you talk about like evolving or whatever. I realize that I wake up in the morning and my first reaction now is to look at my phone.
Yep, mine too.
But it's really dark and it hurts my fucking eyes. But I do it anyway, and I'm like, I don't care. Like I need to know if I have a little one above my little Facebook icon. I need to know if there's a little one above my fucking thing.
Oh, my mom
and
liked what I
It's
posted.
never important. It's never important. Like if it's important, I'll get the information eventually.
But your alarm a lot of times is your phone too.
Well, that's what happens. Is my alarm goes off, so I click the stop the alarm, and then I start looking at my phone, and it's like I just put the thing down, just get up, stretch like a normal ass human being, but it's so damn interesting. Like it's so interesting that you have all this, and I'm almost like trying to make up shit to look up on the internet so I can.
I find myself just staring at my phone sometimes, going, I really looked at everything, but there's got to be something else on here that I haven't seen in a while.
Google chicken today.
There must be an app.
Yeah.
There must be an app in here I haven't clicked on in a while. I need to see what it's doing.
Yeah. Oh, they changed the format.
Oh look. I'm done using it now, but that was interesting.
I think
I think someone might have commented now. I'll go back to that one.
Ooh. Oh shit. I think it's a matter of stimulus and like communication, and we're just feed off it. Like it's like a way to like ingest things, like stimulus is, we're just overstimulated. Like people, they're having neck problems because they're looking at a phone, because the phone is just so much more interesting than anything going on around them. Mm-hmm. So like,
well, their world is in the phone.
Yeah, everything. Well, that's what matters,
part.
right?
Yeah.
And so even while like, you get distracted by it, and you have some downtime, and you just want to check stuff on your phone, and it's just interesting because I think that we're ingesting a ton of information, but I don't think we yet have a really good way to analyze, disseminate, to really like memorize, to like really sift through it and get to what's interesting or what's important or what's useful or what, it's just trivia or trivial, or you know what I mean? So I think we'll get better at it. I think we'll, learn how to use technology better, and we'll learn how to gather information and how to talk about information better. And I think that's what we're going through right now, is this kind of like here's everything, and then we just have to kind of like sift through things and talk about things with each other and try to figure out what's interesting, and I'm curious how, because one of the things I was thinking about lately is that I like to do like 3 things at one time. I like to watch I like to play a video game, watch a TV show, and then sometimes while I'm doing that, like I'll just stop and I'll just look at my phone, and I'm just like, this is just too much. And I watched this. I read this article about multitasking, and multitasking, you essentially don't learn either skill. Like if you're trying to like watch something on YouTube, like something educational or something or informational, and while you're doing something else, you won't remember or really fully understand or comprehend either item. You won't remember what happened in the video game.
Yeah, it's not like 50-50. It's not like you'll learn it 50%.
No. You'll learn like 5-10% of each, because you're not attending to any particular information and then comprehending and then turning it into long-term memory that is based on comprehension. And
how often would we multitask when we're hunting and gathering?
I don't know even what that would look like. I mean, you essentially are doing one thing at a time.
Yeah, you would just be hunting.
The amount of options are...
You're doing what you're doing at that moment. You're not...
Yeah.
I mean, maybe there's some scenarios where someone's trying to take care of a kid while preparing a meal or something like that. Those kinds of multitasking. But that's not learning. That's just producing.
But even 20 years ago, you couldn't do what I'm talking about. You couldn't do that. I mean, the cost of having those products would be outrageous, and then
if you were on the internet, you couldn't use your phone.
That's what I mean, like because the bandwidth and all that. Yeah. So like before, you would have like one book, one newspaper. You would do one thing at a time as far as information, or you would listen to the radio, and that you just all sat around a thing and you listen to the radio. You watch TV. It's just one thing, and I'm really trying to because I like to learn and I like to learn, I like to educate myself using the internet and using YouTube and stuff and reading things and then audiobooks and stuff. But I'm really trying to understand that I'm not getting as much out of it if I try to do too much at once. So I'm trying to turn one thing off, just do one thing at a time, really read an article and go through it and listen to what they're saying and get something out of it. Which is something I've learned from, because stimulus, information, people talking, it's just spellbinding to me. I just love it, and I want it all now. I'm just always ingesting people and information. And
You're
stuff.
a fucking cannibal? What is going on? This is took a dark
Do you know what I'm
turn.
talking about?
Yes, I think
I'm talking about metaphorically ingesting things into my brain through my ears.
I have times at work where I'm
eyes.
trying to edit video, and then I also have my browser open in the background, and it has a little pop-up when emails come in. And sometimes I'll find myself starting to edit and then go to the email, then go back to the editing, go back to the email, and I'm like, I'm not doing well at either of these tasks right now, and I just turn off the browser and focus on what I'm doing, and that's just.
And then you get it done, and then you can go to the other thing.
Yeah, and it's we're just not good at it yet, or maybe ever.
See, that's the thing. That's you were talking about evolution. Now, evolution is slow. We don't evolve within our lifetime. I can't evolve
it's thousands
anything.
of years.
Well, yeah, I mean,
they do show some studies on some I don't know if they call it microevolution or something like that.
Maybe, yeah.
I digress. Some sorts of adaptation that are evolution-esque but happen faster. But in general, primarily evolution is a 1,000-year
right.
plus
and I think when you use evolution in that term, you're just talking about changing. You're just talking about adapting.
Whatever you want to call it.
Right.
Yeah.
So if we adapt
if
we adapt ourselves and come up with better ways to present media, then we could get to the point where we can do multitasking in getting multiple things in, or making things more concise so that it takes less time. So we don't need to multitask. So we just we get this done.
An implant that they just put a little chip in your head and.
Well, that would take
I know Spanish now.
Ton of neuroscience.
I don't think it's unreasonable at all. I think it could be that way at some point.
If we can figure out how learning works and we can figure out how information is processed in the brain, I think, and we're trying to figure that out.
Figure out how the brain works as just potentially a storage for information. Well, how do we get this information in there? And if we can do that by bypassing the normal process, it'd be
Well, the brain does
possible, maybe
everything,
or not. It doesn't seem so surprising that could happen.
Right. Obviously, it's not. At this point, it's so amazing what we can do that, I don't think it's surprising. I mean, that's why, simulation theory isn't. It wouldn't be surprising if, if one day we get to a cellular level and we look at an atom and the atom says, Apple Inc. it's got a little trademark on it. You know what I mean? Like, that's like, oh my shit, we found out what electrons are, who made them. You know what I mean? Like, I'm saying, like, I don't think it would be that surprising because we kind of have this frontier of possibility with technology, and I think that it's easy to think really positively about all of it and just be like, oh, we're gonna all have spacesuits and be awesome and see better and run better and stuff. Actually, I was watching a really cool video about running, and this guy had these
watch a lot of
springy
the
things.
Pistorius one? Like Pistorius with his no legs?
I think that's what it was. No, not.
Oh, these are just on your feet?
No, it was just a regular guy, and he would
run
just.
faster.
It was an additional thing, and it had a little spring, and it would allow you to run up to 25 miles an hour.
Yeah, I saw that.
And you can jump higher and stuff like that's really cool and very. It's not even that high tech. It's just very engineering,
mechanical
technology. Very mechanical, and no electronics involved. But that kind of stuff, augmented. Physicality, augmented reality, having Google Glasses to be able to identify things in your environment, I think is just, I don't know. I mean, I think it'll be interesting. Do you think it'll be interesting? I mean, I would assume it's pretty interesting.
Well, I think interesting nonetheless.
Yeah, when people say interesting, it's like they can just say that. It doesn't like. Of course, it's fucking interesting. Like
I would have
you're
walked
not
out
really
if it
accomplishing
wasn't.
much.
That's all.
Yeah, I would have left immediately. But to say something's interesting is just kind of like, oh yeah, well that's why you're talking about it.
I think it's smart to, always be evaluating what you're doing and try to have some sort of perspective. Try to be careful to some degree. But I think kind of like you started out some of the conversation about this is, it's good that there are a lot of people out there just going forward, and there's a certain amount of that almost just head down, see how far we can go. That I think can have a lot of positivity. Yeah. And there is some benefit in them not necessarily stopping every 5 minutes to go, is this ethical? Is this the right now what happens if this works? And I mean, I think there's a certain amount of that you have to do, but there's also a certain amount of abandoning what could happen and just the exploration of trying to figure out how much farther you can take something is how we've gotten to where we are now.
Sure. Experimentation can have
some
interesting effects, Fuck yeah. This is good.
This is good?
I liked it.
Oh yeah?
It was very
we stayed semi on topic. We
somewhat
kind of strayed here and there.
No, I enjoyed it. I'm just saying, like, I think it's a little kind of generic,
you want to get more specific?
No, we're not. None of us are smart enough. None of us know the specifics of all this stuff.
That shouldn't stop us.
Yeah, that's true. When has that ever stopped me before?
Well, a lot of this is opinion and throwing in a couple facts that we may or may not have heard about this or that.
I read on Wikipedia.
Yeah, it's kind of big picture stuff. I like it. It's really. I love talking about the future and talking about. I mean, who knows what'll happen? I mean,
you have is it your phone that's your favorite piece of tech right now?
Yeah, it would have to be. I use it so much. I'm always doing stuff on it. I think it's probably a big distraction from my ability to learn new things because I don't know. It's as much a distraction as it is a helpful thing. But
well, it's all how you use it.
I do that on purpose. Like I have excess time sometimes, and I don't mind wasting it on just checking out random shit on the internet. But
sure.
I think that's probably my favorite thing. I enjoy my. It's like so fast as far as processing goes that it's like I think maybe that's part of why it's so interesting. Is I'm just like. It's like hitting a button that does something interesting, like if I was a monkey, and I'm just so astounded by the quickness at which it loads a new page that I'm just clicking on things so that I can, and I'm just, oh shit, this is so bright and pretty, and look at it go, look at it go, look at it go. Look at my phone. My phone is cool. I think a lot of it is like novelty. It's just like, oh, this is fucking really
visual
cool.
Stimulation.
The flip side of that's kind of funny when people are like bitching about, oh my god, this page is taking 20 seconds. Just give it a fucking second. It's a miracle of technology that didn't exist like 20 years ago, and you're whining because it takes
Yeah, it's connecting
second
to
to load?
satellites that are like miles in the sky, and it's trying to do it as fast as possible, and it's doing, a billion bits of information,
And that
and you're
person-
like mad that it like
and
your
then you
little
had no
picture won't
participation
line
in its
up.
creation whatsoever.
Yeah, that's like Louis C.K.'s joke about like planes and people bitching on planes. Yeah.
Oh,
you're in
yeah,
a
that's the
fucking metal
Wi-Fi joke.
tube,
Yeah.
30,000 feet in the air, traveling at 600 miles an hour, and you're gonna bitch that the Wi-Fi doesn't work.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like,
I don't think you really
get some
appreciate
fucking
this.
perspective.
Yeah, for sure. And I, people
He was talking about
obviously.
the Oregon Trail journey. It would take 3 months, and half of you would die along the
Yeah,
way.
and get
and-
dysentery and shit. And shit, literally,
Yeah.
not
Yeah,
in
no,
a good
to
way.
death.
Frostbite,
To death.
potentially.
Shitting to death. That would
Eating
that's
each other if you
Yeah.
end up in a bad spot.
Was that a part of that game? The Oregon
Donner's
Trail game
Pass?
was there?
Donner's Pass?
No,
Donner's?
everybody just died of dysentery in that
I think
game.
it was mostly dysentery.
Wasn't it Donner? Donner
The Donner Party, yeah.
Was that in the game though? I
No.
remember
I don't
that.
think
That was
so.
a real occurrence.
That was like a
Guy.
kid game. Do you want to? You're out of food. Do you want to resort to cannibalism, and you have to make a moral decision?
I know it was a game you played in school. I don't
It's
know.
a real choice.
Who do you want to kill?
That's a real
Eat.
choice to make.
Yeah.
Yeah,
In some
yeah, you got to
situation.
deal with that.
M-rated
Do
Oregon
you
Trail
kill
game.
the fat one or do you kill the young one that isn't contributing?
It might taste better.
I think the fat one
That's
tastes
tough.
great
I don't know.
if it's more efficient.
A lot of animals we eat now
You
are
knowledgeable about cannibals?
young when butchered.
No, but I'm saying the fat one provides you only kill one person and you get the most meat.
Oh, it's like the thing we were watching on YouTube
it's
where
just
he's
effective.
making the argument that you hated about the train tracks. You could save one or save
Oh, I
five.
don't like that. Yeah,
It reminds
it's
me of that.
it's the old moral question of
Here's
if
a
you
scenario
can
that
if,
could never happen.
well, it's like the scenario if
What
you,
would you do?
like, let's say in your death you could donate 4 organs, right, to 4 people who need it and they need to live, and you go to a hospital and this doctor's like, hey, you have these 4 organs, and then is it moral for the doctor to murder you for your organs? And so your life, you know, one person dies but 4 people live, and that's just a consequentialist
What if you
way
choose-
to live.
what if you choose to give them up?
Well, that's another part. You could use that argument whether or not it's moral to sacrifice yourself. That's a consequentialist way to look at the earth. And if that's the way that you wanted to live your life, then people would do that kind of stuff. I don't think people do that. You know, I don't think people want to kill themselves so that other people will live.
There's so many in that scenario, are you yourself sick and dying, but in your organs?
No,
or
you
could
aren't.
just
You're not already.
They just called you up and they're like, "Hey, we just
See, that's
happened to find
the
out
fundamental
that-"
problem with these moral questions
Yeah,
is
that's
that
what I
they're
mean. There's some
implausible
variables.
and they're not practical. They're not situations that you're ever going to
That's
be
a
in.
ridiculous question.
And therefore, you're making a ridiculous question to prove a ridiculous point, which is that we can do math related to killings. You know what I mean? Like, it's okay, so
Yeah.
4 people live, but one person is not. It is not good to murder one person.
It does seem though there's a way
Ever.
they are learning something from these wacky scenarios, and I think that's intriguing to say.
What
okay,
are they learning?
Well, it seems like they're learning potential behavior of somebody in different scenarios. So, like he was talking about specifically with potentially psychopaths. You know, most normal people, if you had to just switch a switch, kill 1 instead of 5, most people would choose the 1,
Yeah.
not the 5. Now, if you go up on the bridge above and you have to push the guy over to stop the train, you have to physically touch him,
Right.
drop him off the train tracks.
So having no empathy
And-
is beneficial in
and
that scenario.
The psychopaths generally would have been fine with that, where most people would not have. So it seems like they are learning something from it, but it does seem like maybe there's a way to make it more logical or a better question that gets the same answer. I don't know if it. I think to them it probably doesn't matter. They're kind of like, I don't care how realistic the actual scenario could be. We actually do learn about people's potential behavior based on their reactions to a scenario.
Yeah, but it's so just.
Yeah.
I don't. When you really think about it, ultimately, why would I be in a position where I'm going to make this decision? And why is me not deciding, why can't I abstain from the decision making? Why can't I make a moral decision to not flip the switch, to not hurt the gentleman? And I'm not morally responsible for killing a man to save another couple people. How is that? Why can't the decision be yes, no, or not at all? But they never give you that option because they're creating a scenario in which
you have to pick one.
You have to pick one or the other, but it's such an implausible situation that it doesn't have any bearing on our real lives. You're never going to be in that situation, and if you are, deal with it. You got to deal. What a weird, scary situation. I would be really sad for you to be in that situation where you have to kill someone to save someone.
But so can't you learn something from a lesson like that?
I don't think you can learn something from something that will never happen by creating a theoretical concept that is never going to happen or is so improbable that it's not useful. It's more useful to be like in a scenario where you have the opportunity to save a drowning child. Is it morally are you morally responsible to save that drowning child if you can? And I think that that's a more interesting and plausible situation. Or if somebody's choking in a restaurant and you're a doctor, are you morally obligated to help them? And that's a question we can talk about. That's a question you can answer. That's a question you can figure out. And
so is there any, sorry if I'm cutting you off.
Yeah.
Is there any scenario that would be similar that is realistic?
Try to think of one. It's okay. I mean, I'm okay to talk about interesting scenarios, but I don't think that they necessarily get to any fundamental moral decision making. If you want to be a consequentialist, then be a consequentialist and just kill yourself so that your 4 organs will save 4 other people. Fucking have fun. But I'm not a consequentialist. I don't think it's moral to sacrifice yourself or sacrifice other people for the benefit of other people.
Consequentialist. I've never heard of that.
Yeah, it's a philosophical standpoint, but it makes sense in a lot of scenarios, like in these theoretical things, to think, okay, so it's consequentialism is, it doesn't matter what the act is, it's the consequences of the acts that determine whether you should do them or not. So you should always do the thing that produces the most good for the most people. But that's just a prescription for disaster. It's a prescription that no one ever actually takes into account either. Like, we don't want to sacrifice ourselves, and we're not in situations where we have to murder people to save people. It's not moral to murder someone. That's it.
I think any of these scenarios, it's impossible to just have a discussion about it. You have to literally be in this. Like, if you were a doctor in a restaurant, somebody was choking. I think if somebody asked you and you were like an astounding doctor that was really cool, you would just be like, oh yeah, of course I'd save the guy. But you wouldn't really know unless he was you would have to like stage it without him knowing, like a candid camera scenario where somebody starts choking and you're like watching that guy. Because then you would get your real answer. It's like walking the walk and talking the talk are 2 very separate things.
Right, but we can. So let's say we're in a situation where a man dies because he's in a restaurant and there was someone who people know could have saved them. Mm-hmm. Do we hold that person legally or responsible for it? And
you see the restaurant and make lots of money.
Our decision. Yeah. Like, why are you? What does morality have to do with it? What can I get out of it? Who cares about the dead man? I'm going to sue. Yeah. Well, there's a particular result, but I'm just saying, like, so the moral implications of that scenario are important, and you can say that we're morally obligated to. Like, we have positive obligations. We in a certain situation, you have to do that. But in so doing, you might put yourself in danger, and you might be held responsible if that person ends up dying anyway. So it's not as simple as just being like, well, obviously I'd help them. I think we all would like people to help, and we'd all. It's like, it would be nice if people helped each other, but I don't think we can hold them morally responsible if they choose to abstain from action. You can't. If someone, it's not immoral to not do something.
Really?
Can we create positive moral obligations? I'm just saying these are questions that philosophers ask. These are questions. I don't think it's it. We want to. If people can do stuff to help and they have very little risk, then I think we want people to do that. But whether or not we can like ostracize them, say you're a dick, but holding them legally or like, you know, like putting them in a cage or like hurting them or something, you know what I mean? Like, what do you do if somebody says I'm not going to help them?
There's a difference between legal ramifications and
moral,
societal and moral implications.
I'm just saying, like, let's say I see a doctor and he goes, I know he's a doctor, he's my buddy, and I see someone choking. You don't have to be a doctor to do the Heimlich maneuver. It's a pretty common thing, but there could be there could be a tracheotomy or something. or you're on a plane and she's giving birth and you need a doctor and there's a doctor there, but he's like, I'm not going to get involved, and that's my decision.
Day,
what do
I'll
we
feel
do
good.
about that man? Can you hurt him? Can you it's a shitty situation, and it's not always black and white, and it is situation by situation, and we kind of have to deal with things. And that's the thing about morality, is a lot of it is black and white. A lot of it isn't so obvious that we can just say, burn him at the stake. He didn't do this or he didn't do that. But what we can say is that certain things you are morally wrong, like positive action, like actions that affect other people in negative ways, like initiating force.
Yeah,
and
it's an interesting
things like
concept.
that. Right, it's interesting to think about
in the
in the
sense
real
of
world.
not doing something. Is there a potential morality or lack of morality in inaction? And I think that's an interesting concept. I think as an example that it's kind of running through my mind, though, is like if you had information that you knew
could save
somebody
lives.
was going to murder somebody, and murder is bad, and you know nobody else knows, and you choose not to say something, there feels like some moral obligation there, even though you're choosing just to not act.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and that's why it's not always easy to.
Yeah.
And it's important to have like an understanding of the situation, be sympathetic to what's going on, because he might have that information, but maybe the reason the risk of telling the information is someone murders his family. So you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of scenarios that you can paint that, but I think it's more important to talk about real world situations, like
That is a real world situation, is it not?
I don't think people tend to know information that that could save someone's life very often. I've never known information.
Very often is not mean it's not.
I'm saying that's
plausible
not a pretty
situation that
it's
could actually
totally
happen.
it's totally plausible, but whether or not we come up with an answer for it right now isn't going to necessarily help a lot of people. What I'm talking about is we can there are moral situations that happen all the time in our daily lives that are I think more useful to come up to answers for, like whether
So
or not it's
basically you're dissing my examples. What you're saying?
no. I'm
My
saying that
example
it's
Is that what you're
They're
saying?
examples of Hollywood movie plot.
Oh, jeez.
I think starring Bruce Willis. No, it's an interesting question, and I'm totally down to talk about it. I'm just saying that
Just
you know
kidding, buddy.
we
Bro.
we oftentimes will get lost in these kind of scenarios, and it's
I mean, I would, to be devil's advocate, I'd hate for your counter to always be more specific. No, that doesn't really work. 'Cause
No, you're right.
Be a little more specific.
I am
more specific.
I am not really interested in really deep with that particular scenario.
Yeah,
I will admit. I mean, I'm totally down to discuss it, but
Every scenario you guys come up with, I just am creating plots in my mind.
yeah, you're like writing a little
that's
story.
That's how my brain works. I'm just
Yeah.
like, this is what this would
But that's
happen,
what
and this is why this guy couldn't do this. And
Almost all dramatic stories have to do with moral implications, moral questions.
all
Is
of
it
them.
right? Is it wrong? What decisions do people make? And those are
It's
really
always
interesting.
a main conflict.
Yeah,
Typically.
morality and ethics is a huge topic. Very
We're
important.
always everybody's dealing with it on a day-to-day basis. And
Exactly.
So when you challenge people in a film or in a book, it's very intriguing to people, and I think most people, grow from learning about different perspectives about different situations, and they learn more about themselves and what they deem moral and ethical based on, even fictitious stories about potential moral and ethical quandaries.
Yeah, and our expectations can be shaped by our the information we get and the people we're around in our environment, and like we want to be good and we want to do what's right by other people and stuff. So, really getting deep when it comes to morality and ethics, like coming up with principles, universalizing them, finding out what works and what is necessary, to be moral is important. And it's not an easy just do it because of this, just do it because of that. God said this, you know what I mean? Like the commandments, it's a very important topic.
Yeah. There should be much more evidence to support why you're doing it.
Yeah, there
Other than
should
you
be
were
some
just
logic
told.
and some
Yeah.
reasoning, and there should be some what are the consequences and what are the implications, and you got to go into it. And
that's what I think about every time I get one of those like scenario questions. I'm like, well, can I ask you a bunch of questions about the exact scenario that I'm in before I give my answer? Because how am I feeling that day? Did I have breakfast? I mean, there's this, I don't know. Every situation is always different. And
Sure.
Yeah. Technology to morality.
Yeah, I don't know how that happened.
It just happened.
God,
that's what's
so
fun
weird.
about it.
It's like organic stuff.
It's fun. It's fun to contemplate.
Yeah, really good.
You know, there's people that would sit in a room like this, and not even the most basic thing we talked about today would even come up. Not to like put us on a pedestal like we're spectacular, but it's interesting to think that there are people that are, is it shallow or just
dumb?
I think about that all the time when I'm judging people. All the time. I wonder how many people actually do this, and that's part of the reason why I enjoy doing this podcast.
Sure.
Because it's like an outlet for doing that. I don't know really anybody else that I could just sit here and chat for 2 hours about stuff like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting how our minds work, and I think a lot of people just want to talk about football or just want to watch the Kardashians, and
I think they don't I think people have a challenge with. Sorry to cut you off. We do that a bit.
It's okay.
People have a challenge with not knowing something or controversial subjects. People, almost in a weird way, know their emotion about something, and in almost maybe a socially smart way, choose not to talk about certain things because they know it's going to be a conflict. But I think there are a lot of people too that they're really just content with the basic, just the surface.
Well, there's a range of personalities, and there's a range of intelligence, and I've been thinking about intelligence a lot lately, and I pride myself on like being smart, and I like to look things up and stuff, but I'm not that smart. I haven't accomplished very much as far as in the way of intellectual accomplishments, and so.
You have like an eager,
right? Like I haven't written any books. I don't have a doctorate. You know what I mean? Like there's some way smarter people than me, but I think there are some way dumber people than me as well. I think that I'm intelligent enough to know that I'm not that intelligent, and I think that's important.
That's smart.
Yeah,
that is pretty smart.
That is
right. Concept. That's what I mean. I'm just saying. Like I really want to know. Like I think there is a spectrum of people on the earth, and I can't expect everyone to give a shit about philosophy and morality, and they aren't. I'm not gonna. I don't have a lot to relate with them, and so I think there's a lot. There's a proportion of the world that's not having these kind of conversations, and I think it's these kind of conversations that that lead to change and lead to interesting realizations and hopefully, or at least stimulating to other people who maybe will look things up and figure things out and do more research than we do, because we didn't really do a lot of research.
I've been doing a lot, actually. Usually when we decide on a topic, I spend my week researching it.
Doing this has been
really
getting me more into that, for sure.
And I think about things a lot more.
I like to just quote other podcasts.
Yeah.
That's where I get
fuck it. If somebody does it better than you, just do that. Fuck it.
Yeah.
If somebody else has a really good idea and you want to get on that, you want to support it, then support it. You don't have to be the initiator of every new idea. But there's a lot of dumb people out there. I just like to say that.
No, there really are.
I think we don't talk about it enough.
Yeah.
Smart people.
I think it's interesting
Smart
too
enough.
how I think there's a lot of people that get emotional about a topic. It's just a theory I have, is that some people that get the most emotional about a topic, it's because they're actually very insecure with their stance on that subject. There's a certain level of...
Yeah, because you get more defensive if you're...
Yeah, because you don't have enough evidence to back up what you're saying.
Right.
I think there's an element of that.
Then there's a level of...
No, I'm right.
Shut your mouth.
Yeah, obviously people get... Just kidding. People get emotional. You're like... You get like ultra emotional about it. Like, no, you don't get to question me. I don't know. I've been thinking about it.
Just shut up! Just shut up!
There's definitely a... emotional responses can definitely halt a conversation, obviously.
But it reminds me, let me cut you off for just 1 second.
Yeah, no, I don't know where I was going to go.
It seems like an amazing amount of these very like anti-gay public figures end up being gay. So things like that are interesting. How the people speaking most loudly, against something or the most emotional about something on one side or the other. I think it, at least in my mind,
moving like the target off your back by being so loud about it and like anti-homosexual in that scenario. Then people are just like, well, there's no way he's fucking gay. He hates them. So.
He clearly hates him a lot.
Yeah.
It's like you were telling me about an issue at work where there's a policy about specific identification or whatever for doing certain transactions, and from what we talked about, you normally don't get any guff or any issues where if there's an issue with a card or whatever. But this one case, they were extremely frustrated with the situation, and it happened to be that they were the shady one. They're trying to put the
Oh yeah,
be
okay.
so, they're so
I get
aggressive
it.
in
Sure.
trying to prove that they're not the one. That there's
So-
almost evidence that they are the one.
Yeah.
When you don't have a logical argument or any evidence to back you up, then you use emotion. You use insults. You use
Yep.
like a woman will cry to get her way, or a guy. It doesn't happen very often, but a guy will use violence to get their way. These are
Or a girl.
these are not how you
Do we need to talk about your marriage?
I'm talking
Is that
about.
what's going
Yeah.
on?
Do we need to talk about something a little different? Yeah, for sure. Emotional responses that are not passionate with like a clear like argument behind it, I think, are just They're not. You're never going to get anywhere with that. You're just having a tantrum. You're just being a baby, and you don't get that's not going to help the argument. It's not going to teach anyone anything. So yeah, it's definitely a mechanism that people use. They they get upset. They get they get mad or something like.
Well, a lot of times,
but there isn't
the
any
emotion
like
diverts the facts.
That's
too.
what I'm saying. It's a distraction. It's a way to not deal with the issue. It's not you're just not. It's not an argument. So why? I'm just gonna leave or something.
Seems almost kind of primal in a way. Like animals, when you use something that upsets them, they will like growl at you or snip at you, and it's like an emotional response from people.
Sure.
Instead of like logically discussing your issue, you
Right.
you just attack the person,
Sure.
and then it's like a signal for the other person to lay off. Like this person, is very
and that
mean
comes
about
from
this.
how they learned how to have conversations, how they learned to talk about things, how they learned how to learn is, somebody just told them the way things were, and then if they argued with them, that person just was emotional or violent or you don't get it, you don't understand, and they leave or something. That's you learn that behavior from people, and I think it's sometimes it's a little hard not to get your way or to have a conversation with somebody that when you disagree, and we all need to learn how to have arguments and how to be persuasive and how to look at evidence and information.
I'm just lucky I'm always right. It makes it
it's
easy.
way easier if you just don't let them talk. It's a lot easier. Or if you just go no, it's obviously you win. I don't
Evidence. No, shut up. I'm not done. Evidence. Oh, time's up. Bye.
Yeah, sorry. You're dumb. I'm dumb. I'm smart. You're dumb. Fuck you. For sure. And I was gonna say we happen to all kind of have similar opinions about things, or at least we're alike enough that we're going to be able to have these
comfortable
conversations.
to articulate
Right.
about ideas on either side, I think, for the most part.
I'm down to talk about anything, and I really want to be open to arguments and things. But it's not like we have somebody. We're not trying to get. We don't have a Christian and an atheist.
It's not a debate, no.
Yeah, that's what I mean. This isn't a debate, so it's a bit of a different situation. So I wouldn't expect, emotionality to come into play too much here, as far as
I'm not
distracting from an issue.
Sure. It's just
you
an
know.
interesting phenomenon. And
It is
how
interesting,
It almost
for sure.
seems so obvious, yet the person that's doing it thinks they're doing the opposite.
Yeah, they don't. They don't. They're just
They're like, if I just really, we're probably beating a dead horse here, but if I just, vehemently oppose this thing so much, it'll be so clear that it's not me.
Well,
and
it's
even part of that's convincing themselves.
It's a tactic that works. It stops the conversation. It makes you feel like you've accomplished something. I'm sure there's something to that, but it doesn't forward any kind of real knowledge about anything. So, it's a bad way to communicate. Really, it's the I'm right and I'm not going to listen.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people don't understand what the fuck is going on. They don't know. They're dumb.
You just went really broad there.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know what's going on. So of course they're going to resort to just non arguments. Duh.
I think we killed that one. That dead horse is
It's
way
rotting.
deader.
Yeah.
Deaderer.
It's chopped up into little pieces and we're going to
sick.
barbecue it.
What?
I wanted to turn it into glue, but
Well, that's what you do with the hooves and
okay.
the bones, and then
I just don't want to eat
the
it.
meat
That's
will
gross.
eat. How is it gross to eat a horse?
I was just going to ask that. Why don't we eat horses?
Because cows are way easier to take care of
tastier, I'd imagine.
and bigger and easier to deal with.
That's a different podcast, maybe.
Yeah, I think that's
Why do we,
can
eat,
just talk
why do
about
we
all-
eat and not eat certain things? That'd be an interesting thing. To
Yeah,
dissect.
sure. We also didn't none of us choose. I didn't go to a farmer and be like, hey, why don't you have horses? We just farm.
You didn't.
You just
You
go
know,
to
we
the
have
market. Where's
we-
the horse meat?
Yeah,
This is
I mean,
bullshit.
There's a lot of history going on.
cultural history that deals
that's
with that.
why.
Shit. Everybody's standing up. I feel like I'm down in a hole.
All right, we can stay in your hole.
Felt like you were. I was worried a little bit.
Get
You
in
were
your
standing
hole.
up for so long. I thought you were just like, well, I'm superior. You guys stay down there.
Yeah, that's funny. I was just
I'm
watching.
going to orate from right here, guys.
I was
Just,
watching It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and these two guys are sitting on a bed, and the other two dudes are just standing
Right,
there
I
trying to
gotta
talk
stand
to him, and they're like, what's with the standing? You're lording over us. What are you trying to make a power move? Are you being superior here? And they're like, what the fuck? We're just trying to talk right now. There's no chairs, and they're like, you're gonna need to squat because we feel like you're superior to us, which is an interesting body language. People who put their arms crossed, lean forward, are displaying a particular type of dominance in a conversation. So
You try to be cognizant of your body language.
oh yeah, body language is really important and really interesting to me. And in learning sign language, body language has become a
I was
very
asking Channing.
fucking Channing.
I'm just kidding.
You're just like
Making eye
shut
contact
up,
with you,
shut up,
asking
Joe.
this guy.
No, we don't have to go into that. We don't have to go into body language, but I think this has gone on fucking long enough. But very
lengthy.
interesting.
We out of time?
I'm glad we got to do this. So we will end it for the evening, and thank you, Josh. Do you want to plug your Twitter or your podcast again, just so they can write it down?
Podcast Spouting Off with Josh Gray. Just go to my website, joshdgray.com. That's it. Thanks.
Cool.
Thanks for having me on. It's been really fun, and have to have you on my podcast soon.
Weird.
Oh, yeah, that'll be fun.
Man, if only we had the time. And
Yeah.
Our next one's just going to be really weird with just two people again.
yeah.
Yeah, I think you guys plan. Well, we can talk about this more later, but do you think you'll have more guests? Is there any intention of that, or is it just free flow, just whatever happens?
I think it'd be fun to have more
Or are you
guests.
guys pissed to have
I'm
me
trying
on?
to talk my wife into coming on at least once just to chat.
That'd be
Because
cool.
she has very opposing views from us. And
Sure.
so that would be
Oh,
an interesting... She is a Christian, Baptist, raised, and so she has a very
Sure.
different outlook
Yeah.
on things.
Interesting.
Well,
That'd be great.
You know what?
As long as
Maybe
it can be civil.
yeah.
For
Yeah,
me,
I-
mostly, because I have
That
to
would
go
be
home.
challenging. Interesting. I've done a podcast with my wife, and it's very pleasant, but it's an interesting dynamic. You have this, really great relationship on one level, but it's just this very different dynamic being on the mic with somebody. It's interesting.
Yeah,
It's fun.
for sure. Everyone acts differently when they're being observed in new ways, and when you're on microphones, you're like, "Oh, this is
Yeah.
going to be recorded."
Do you find yourself? I find myself not totally unaware, but almost. There are times where I go, "Oh yeah, I'm on a mic."
I forget that I have
Yeah.
a mic. Within about 5, like that first, when he does the intro every
Yeah.
time, I just have this big smile and I'm like, I got a fucking mic in my face. And
Yeah.
then like
This is
5 minutes
weird.
later, I'm just a conversation
Yeah.
at that point.
Yeah, it's cool. Well, thanks again. I appreciate it, and it's been fun.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for coming, and we'll definitely have more guests. Anytime. I'm totally down to do whatever, and
I'd love to even be a regular if possible,
Yeah. Well, I mean,
as regular as I can.
yeah, for sure. I mean,
Just every time you're around, we'll just do one.
Well, yeah. Well, when you're up, we'll do one.
Yeah.
and then just more excuse to come down more.
For sure.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks, and thanks for listening, everybody.
Good night and good luck.